Hi everybody, Jennifer Blevin-Smith with Integral Clinic Solutions, and you're watching my YouTube channel, Navigating the Business of Medicine. Today I want to talk about hiring front office staff, and the first part of this series is going to be about looking for the right candidates, and then the second part is going to be talking about how to set them up for success, how to give them the resources that they need to do a good job for you. The reason I am focusing on the front desk staff and not everyone else is because this is where the revenue cycle management starts. This is also the place where it feels that a lot of practices have trouble finding good, strong workers, and they tend to have a higher turnover rate at the front desk. And I'm going to try to point out to you different areas where I think that becomes an issue. So I know the front desk is the hardest position in the whole office. I can argue anybody to this point. You can tell me that you disagree, and that's fine, and you can provide the reasons, but you still won't change my mind. The front desk is so difficult, especially in small private practices where they have to wear many hats, they have to multitask, and they have to be on their A game all the time because they are quote, client facing, customer facing, patient facing all the time. And it's not just physically in person like this, but also over the phone. And they never know what they're gonna get. They never know what's gonna be thrown at them. And they have to know how to handle all those situations. And that can be very intimidating to a lot of people. And it can be very difficult for some personality types. And it just is one of those things that this is just an area of high turnover. And a lot of times it's because they don't feel supported. They don't feel like they have the right resources. It gets too crazy. Nobody hears them when they are having problems, etc., etc., etc. So I'm doing this series to try and help you as an owner or a manager to try and set your front office staff up for success. And I would love if you have input in this after watching it. Put it in the comments below of things that you have felt have helped with your front office in these situations, or different approaches that you've taken. I would love that, so you can share it with everybody else. So again, let's start with talking about the interviewing and hiring process for specifically your front office / registration, because you might have it set up that some people register your patients and then you have different people who check them in at the front office, but we're going to enroll them or keep them all together. We're just going to clump them together. So some things that you should keep in mind when you're posting for this position is you need to be very upfront on the expectations for this role. And what I mean by that is if somebody is coming from a larger entity, like a hospital system, a large medical group, something like that, chances are they have a more focused area of responsibility. So maybe they only answer the phones and schedule appointments, or maybe they only check people in and they don't have to worry about answering the phone, or maybe they only check eligibility and benefits, and they don't have to do all of those things in one day like a lot of smaller practices, private practices, would need their front desk staff to do. So you want to make sure that you give a very healthy look into the requirements for the position and what the duties would include. So it would include answering the phone, scheduling appointments, checking patients in and out, checking insurance benefits and eligibility, using the internet, just whatever it is. If your front desk does referrals, then that would be included in that. There's just so many different avenues that this could be, but I would encourage you to list all of that because it will help weed out the people that might look at it and go, oh, that's too many things, or I'm not comfortable doing that, or I don't know how to do that, I don't want to do that, and they just don't apply. So that's one. Two, you want to make sure that you are open to people who may not have had any experience working in a medical practice, but that has some of the same transferable skills, right? So just because somebody isn't familiar with working a front desk, it doesn't mean they won't be successful at the front desk, as long as you are willing and able to train them appropriately. And that doesn't just mean giving them the information they need, but also showing them that you're there for them to support them in the areas or times when they're struggling a little bit. And if you can't do that in your practice, I understand 100%, but if you want to open the field of candidates to more people, then this is an option. So you get in these resumes, cover letters, and I would require a cover letter in this situation, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But you want to get all of those in, and you will look at the criteria that you've set kind of for this position internally of what you're looking for, and then you kind of separate them, right? Like, yes, I want to interview them, maybe, and then the no's. And then you go through them, and then in the yeses, I would encourage you to look at those cover letters and those resumes, and before you even start to really read them and process the information, look for the attention to detail on those. Look at the punctuations. Look at the capital letters if they're in the appropriate spots. Look at the spelling. Look at the formatting. Look at that stuff. And you might say, that seems really petty. I don't expect people to know all of that, but you should, because this is just basic stuff. Basic periods, basic commas, basic capitalizing of first words in a sentence, and proper nouns. Making sure that things are spelled correctly. They have spell checks, for crying out loud, on computers. Why is it not being used? If there's a word omitted, maybe like an on or a the on accident, because this will show you if the person has attention to detail. The person should be reading their resume and cover letters before they send it, and they should be looking at it with a fine-tooth comb, making sure there are none of those issues, because that makes your first impression on people. And although this should be for all positions, I'm not saying it's not important in other positions, but your front desk staff really needs to have attention to detail. So do your credentialing staff, your billing staff, the people who are really involved in your revenue cycle management. These people need to have very close attention to detail. And if they can't even do that on their resume and cover letter while they're at home with no hopefully other distractions, and this is really important to them, they would make sure that this is clean and good to go. So look for that. Also look at the way that they speak in their writing, because you're going to need someone who can communicate effectively, and that includes in writing. So you want to make sure that you're looking at that. Once you look at that and you are still keeping whatever piles you have to interview, when you call those people in to interview, pay attention to how warm they are with somebody like you who they don't know. Because the people who work the front desk aren't going to know most of the people that come through that door or are on the other side of that phone. And you want someone who is warm and inviting, despite how nervous they are or how unfamiliar they are with the person. They need to be able to conduct themselves professionally and in a warm way, because most people that come to the doctor are not feeling well and they're scared, or both. And so they need to be able to give that sense of calmness to people and that reassurance that they're in the right place. These people are always patient-facing, customer-facing. They need to act like it. They need to understand that they're representing your business and what kind of care that you provide. So how do they dress? How did they show up? Are they not taking it seriously? Are they in leggings? Nothing drives me more than people who interview in leggings, by the way, especially with not a very nice top. It just drives me nuts. Leggings, I feel, are very inappropriate for an interview and to wear during a work day, in my opinion. So how did they show up? Are they put together? Are they well groomed? Because again, they are your first impression to your customers, which are your patients. And this is a business, and they need to look clean, in my opinion, because cleanliness gives off a healthy vibe, and you don't want to go to the doctor somewhere where it feels dirty. So these are all things that you really need to think about. When you ask them questions about their resume, hopefully they're able to go into more detail than just asking yes or no. And hopefully you're helping them get out that detail. You're asking follow-up questions because they need to show you where their baseline knowledge is for working the front desk. Again, the revenue cycle management starts at the front desk. So where is their understanding with the insurance plans in your area and insurance co-pays and deductibles? Do they understand those basics, or are you going to have to teach them? Are they comfortable collecting money and asking for money from patients? And to be honest with you, this is something you should be very upfront with and make sure that they know that they're going to be asked and expected to be collecting and asking for money from patients when there's balances on accounts and so on. So they need to know that, and you need to be making that a question across the board so that they can't come back at a later time when you're confronting them for not collecting money and they go, well, I'm not comfortable doing that. Well, we talked about this in your interview and you said you were, and this is one of the expectations of your job. So there's those kinds of things because it always ends up coming up down the road. And so you just want to be as transparent with them as you hope they're being with you. Again, we're going to go over in this next section about once you hire somebody at training them to what you expect and what your workflows are and your practice expectations. But you want to set the groundwork during the interviewing process so when they get hired, they don't feel like they signed up for something they weren't expecting or didn't know about. So you want to make sure that you're very good about that. And you want to encourage them to ask you questions as well. Another thing I would do for people who you're thinking about hiring is ask them to come in, and you do have to pay them in most states, so I would look at your employment labor laws, but ask them to just sit there and observe the positions in which they would be hired for to make sure that it's a good fit for them, it's what they're expecting, they feel like they can do it. And then it also kind of helps you kind of get an idea if they're going to be a good fit with your other staff, which you do have to consider a little bit in this whole process. And also, are they willing to like jump in and help answer the phone and put someone on hold even though they're not trained and they're just, I mean, if they see that it's busy and they want to help, I mean, that can show a lot of different character traits that might be very beneficial that you're looking for. So these are just some things to think about for your front office staff. Like I said, please join me in the second part where we're going to go over once you've hired somebody and the things that you need to review with them and the things you should give them to be successful. If you have any questions or comments about this, again, leave that in the comments section below. Smash the thumbs up button if today's video was helpful. And as always, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks so much, you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.